Good afternoon, everybody. If I'm well informed, this roundtable is supposed to start at 2, which is now. I hope you've all had a good lunch, and thanks so much for joining this roundtable. Apparently, roundtables have panels now, which is a bit weird. So just ignore this difference between us being up here and you being down there. There shouldn't be a difference. It's really a table where I hope that we can all participate in the conversation on equal footing and make this worthwhile. Having said that, I'm super excited to introduce the speakers that will kick us off into the conversation. I have to my right Alexandra Gese, who has been serving as a member of European Parliament for the German Green Party since 2019. As a member of the Internal Market Committee, she's been intimately involved in the making of the Digital Services Act and other regulations of large commercial online platforms. I have also Rebecca McKinnon to the very right, who is a Vice President of Global Advocacy at the Wikimedia Foundation. She has a very, very long list on her CV, so I'm not going to recite all of that, but she's been previously, among many other things, founding director of the NGO Ranking Digital Rights and, I guess in a former life, CNN bureau chief in Beijing and Tokyo. And then to my right, Alexandra Hejik, is that correct? Thank you. Who is a Polish LGBT plus activist and award-winning author of comics and books. Besides publishing, she also writes for NOS.pl and Krytyka Polityczna. Thank you. And that would be the speakers that I'd like to kick off with. And the topic that we're discussing today, I won't refer, the full title is up there, I think, on community-led alternatives to the public spaces that we've been using online for a long time now. And as you know, the last Commission and Parliament mandates have seen an incredible number of different regulations around those tech spaces. Just to mention the SA, DMA, AIA, DA, DGA, TCO, copyright directive, could go on. And so it just makes your head swirl. Many of those laws are explicitly meant to rein in big tech, to reduce the power that the largest tech corporations on the planet have over global digital markets, but also over our daily lives. The DSA in particular also aims at forcing tech companies to better protect their users from everything from hate speech to targeted disinformation, harassment, and election interference, and a lot of other things. So the bar is really high there for these laws to succeed. At the same time, we see a growing importance of alternative online spaces, such as Wikipedia, which has been around for a long time, of course, but also social networks such as Mastodon, PixelFed, which is a bit like Instagram, PeerTube, which resembles YouTube, and they try to build alternative spaces that are independent from the commercial interests and corporations that we currently depend on. But because those alternatives are not perfect, should I say either or yet, I would like to focus this roundtable on what kind of solutions and alternatives we have, what they do differently, what we should make them thrive towards, because the nice thing is at least we have some influence over how these alternative spaces can look like, something we don't necessarily have with the commercial spaces. I'd like to start with giving space for the three speakers to do some opening remarks, and I would start with you, Alexandra, if I may.
Already.
What, in your view, are the problems that we need to tackle? What is your experience of unhealthy public online spaces? What does it look like?
I am. Oh, is this okay? Isn't this too loud? Well, I am working, I can say, in the internet for a long time now, because I am also an artist. I publish my comics in the internet, and many times I also tackle some political problems that are quite controversial, and they always bring to me a lot of attention from people who are, well, not really, who are not in agreement with me, let's say, and some of them are better in articulating this disagreement, some are worse. But the worst, I think, what I saw was on Twitter, of course, or X, okay. So this was the worst, I think, social media experience, which I didn't recognize during I was there, when I was on Twitter, because it seemed a bit like fun that you can just have an argument all the time, like 100% of the time spent on Twitter. You have to argue with people, and the more witty you are, the more sarcastic you are, the more actually insulting you are, the more likes you get, because you seem, that you owned it. That's very, very important, to own somebody. And it's not about the conversation, really. It's mostly about these short, witty remarks. And also, this makes it very polarizing. I know that also the algorithms, they amplify the voices that are very controversial, fake news, and some misinformation and hate speech also. And when I was posting, because I post a lot about politics, not only about LGBT issues, but when I was posting about LGBT issues, it was one of the worst. I think a similar hate I was getting for Palestine as for LGBT issues on Twitter. So the point is, for example, I had an interesting story myself, because I am in the LGBT community, but in a sense I'm an asexual person, but I don't post about it a lot, and it is, I think, not many people are really hateful towards me for that. But what they were hateful towards me for was they imagined that I am a transgender person. For I don't know why. I don't think it's an insult, so I didn't care to say that I'm not. But for example, on Twitter, when once I've shared a photo of myself, when I said that. I said that I had a surgery that made my figure look completely different, and that I'm happy with that. So they came to this post and started to, pointing that I have manly jaw, I have super manly hands, I have super manly figure, I look like a man 100%. No one would take me for a woman ever. It's I'm just a man, and I will always be a man. And then they came with suicide jokes, with that I should kill myself, that I should that actually they thought that I'm incompetent in anything I do because I am transgender. And for a long time, I had a project that in Polish LGBT circles was quite was considered quite a funny one, because I was trolling them on purpose. I found it funny because I was posting my clear photo of my face, saying transphobes will say that I look like a man, and they were like, because you look like a man, 100% like a man. And many people from the transgender community, they also had fun. Some of them told me that actually it made them feel better because they had a reality check on how transphobes can clock someone. Like they always say, we will always know, we will always see that you're transgender. It seems not so much. And it's really funny when you post some cisgender person and say something about being trans, like anything not related to this person, and they will jump to point. They are primed to see their manly jaw, manly hands. But then when they came with all the suicide jokes, when they came with really, really nasty things that I had to report manually, they shouldn't be able to even write. They should be blocked on the start when someone is using keywords like that. But I had to report them manually, and it was when I was on Twitter, I thought it's fun many people thought it's fun. I think that many people from the community also found it very, very satisfying to see how, like, when hateful transphobes are making fools of themselves. That's always funny. But those comments, I wasn't really concerned with these comments because I knew that they weren't for me. But then I thought that they were for somebody. That's the problem. And many people also saw that, well, they are not for you, but they are for somebody, definitely. So this was also, I saw that while being on Twitter, I saw that I am becoming a very mean person. Like, really, I was looking just for the ways to own someone, to be witty in a shortest possible way, in shortest possible phrase, to say something that is, well, I was never like very insulting, but I was always thinking how to make someone who is disagreeing with me look foolish. Many times they actually were foolish, but yeah. And once I had an interaction with a guy who, well, this was actually over Palestine, and I was reading a lot of justifying what's going on there. And I had enough of this, and he started doing it. Another person started justifying what's going on there. And I responded with something sarcastic. And I was actually shocked because I saw that he responded that, well, wow, so I didn't know that. I will read those books that you recommended to me. We started talking. He had a Twitter Blue, so I think it made it possible for him to write some longer posts. So maybe it made it easier. So we shared some books on the matter, and I'm still shocked that I had this conversation on Twitter because it should be like, he writes something, I am sarcastic, he insults me, and I tell him not to poop his pants, and I win. So, but it wasn't like that, and I was very positively. Well, I was shocked, yes. So, but there is not many instances of such behavior on Twitter. So then I thought that I am way too mean on Twitter, and I'm becoming a person that I don't like. So I quit, and that's how. And I'm now on Instagram. It's better there, I guess. I mean, it's hard to. Maybe I think 4chan is worse than Twitter now.
Thank you so much for sharing. Sounds like it's better until it isn't. Maybe if I can move to you, Rebecca, directly. Now, Wikipedia isn't a social network, but it's still social in the way that there are actual people, collaborating together to build knowledge and write it down. Wikipedia is designated a very large online platform under the DSA. Are community-based alternatives like Wikipedia addressing those problems differently? And if yes, how? What makes these projects the better VLOP, if I may say? And what can big tech learn from you?
Right. Lots of big questions. Thank you. And also, thank you for sharing your personal experience on one particular platform. I think it's important to remember lived experience and to keep that centered in our minds. So I work for the Wikimedia Foundation, and we are the legal and technical and financial host for Wikipedia and other volunteer-run platforms. So the foundation is mainly software engineers and product developers. We do not control the content on Wikipedia. The content is written entirely by volunteers who also determine what the rules are for what constitutes well-sourced encyclopedic content and what does not. And they enforce those rules. So the foundation has some overarching terms of use that are very high level, but in terms of what belongs on the page about COVID-19, or what belongs on the page about the European Parliament, or what belongs on the page about Donald Trump, or whatever, in one of 300 languages, is determined by the communities that maintain those pages, not by the foundation. And what that enables is that context-appropriate rules are developed depending on the subject matter by people who are involved with the subject, who may be experts on the subject. And it is the community who determine what constitutes reliable sources. And they produce guidelines on, lists of sources that are not reliable, that might be widely potentially used. And you can, of course, on a Wikipedia page, I'm sure this audience is very familiar with, you click on the talk page, you can see all the debates about every sentence on a given page. You can see the rules for that page, which have been set by the volunteer communities, not by the foundation. And you can, of course, see on another tab, the history tab, every single edit that was ever made on each page. So it's very transparent in that way. And research by independent academics has shown also that the pages that are best quality, because there are certainly many poor quality pages on Wikipedia, the best quality ones are the ones that are maintained by the largest number of people with the greatest diversity of backgrounds, knowledge, interests, beliefs, etc. So the more diversity you have on Wikipedia in general, and on controversial topics in particular, the better quality, the more reliably sourced that page is. And the least, the poorest quality pages tend to be the ones that have the least number of people maintaining them. So that's, again, it's a bit more than the wisdom of the crowd, in that there are very rigorous rules, and there's actually a very complex system of governance that the volunteers have developed over the past 2 decades, in terms of, if you have a certain number of track record of reliable edits, you might be elected to be a steward or an administrator. You might get, rights to kick people off the platform for bad behavior. There's a universal code of conduct. The foundation supports the volunteers with a trust and safety team that assists when someone, when there is truly harmful behavior on the platform, harassment, and so on. There's a human rights team that helps volunteers at risk, because as Wikipedia's influence has grown, of course, powerful governments, corporations, politicians, and so on seek to influence Wikipedia. It's actually fairly hard to capture the prominent pages in major languages, and as a result, sometimes powerful entities resort to threatening volunteer editors. So we need to support the volunteers in keeping safe, which is why privacy and anonymity are so important, which is why we gather almost no data about users. In fact, when the European Commission determined that Wikipedia is a very large online platform, we couldn't even tell them how many users we have in Europe. We could only tell them how many unique devices we have connecting to Wikipedia in Europe. And one uses a formula to kind of guesstimate how many users that might equal. And based on that formula, it was clear that we fell into the definition of a very large online platform, regardless of whether this law intended to constrain big tech somehow that Wikipedia is also being potentially constrained by it. A few things to say, because the whole topic of Wikipedia as a VLOP could be the subject of like an entire seminar. So I'll put that aside for Q&A. But I do want to kind of point out a few things just from a policy standpoint, since we have the honor of having MEPs here and staff from the European Commission and European Parliament. And I think there's a few things to point out in terms of what we need to protect and support if we want to have more community-run, public interest platforms, projects, if we want a more robust digital commons that can act as an alternative to commercial interests that are not existing to maximize profit, but rather existing to advance a public interest purpose, whether it's large and global or whether it's very small and particular to a community. One is that we very much support the proposed Digital Knowledge Act by Communia that has been drafted by Communia that sets forth a number of potential provisions to strengthen open copyright, free knowledge in the European Union so that the digital commons can be strengthened, so that public interest, digital public infrastructure, digital public goods that is possible for communities to build these projects without being sued for no good reason, et cetera. So one is open content, open licensing. The other is just fundamental human rights. If you are not protecting the people who are reporting, doing research, doing independent research, independent journalism, open data projects, anti-corruption projects, Wikipedia, curation, open translation projects, open research. If you are not protecting those people's right to share reliable, fact-based knowledge, even when it's inconvenient to people in power, and those people are under threat even in European countries. In fact, we are the target of a number of SLAPP lawsuits. They don't just go against journalists, but also against Wikipedians and Wikipedia. If you don't protect the people, fundamental rights to free expression and to privacy, you're not going to have a fact-based digital commons. And this is particularly important in the age of artificial intelligence and large language models. I've heard from a number of European politicians and people in Brussels and elsewhere the concern that in the age of AI, the internet will increasingly be dominated by a few languages, particularly English and Chinese, and that that our digital environment will be even more dominated by a small number of AI companies. And this is a real fear. I know that it's a real concern of the European Commission and Parliament, and a robust digital commons, digital public goods, digital public infrastructure are the strongest antidote or immune system to such an outcome, which I don't think any of us want. You know, if you want linguistic diversity, if you want to ensure that vulnerable communities are able to produce and maintain digital public goods that serve their own public interests, grounded in human rights standards, it's very important to support the digital commons. And in particular, you know, we heard in a previous session about the need for a decentralized pluralistic economy, and the ability to have more decentralized innovation. I think we've seen examples in the past of how, whether it's with Wikipedia, other open knowledge, that can be the basis for local innovation, so that smaller businesses, smaller commercial activities can thrive, not just the largest players. So just in conclusion, if we want a digital environment in the age of AI that isn't increasingly homogeneous, but also dominated by propaganda, disinformation, and regurgitated hallucinations, a strong digital public sphere, digital public goods, and the protection and support of that is absolutely essential. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Alexandra, as a politician, I guess you're also exposed to all kinds of content online because you're a public person in that regard. I know you're active on a whole range of different social media platforms, I guess including X, Mastodon, and a lot of others. How's your experience, first of all? And how do you think that the current set of regulations, including the DSA, take into account the communities that run some of the community-led things? We heard from Wikipedia as one example. And what do you think is missing?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I couldn't agree more with what has been said. And my personal experience is actually not that bad. I'm white. That helps. I'm not too young. You know, hate targets especially, yes, women, but also young people, people with some kind of migrant background, and the LGBTQ community. That is not a coincidence. That's the agenda of the far right globally. That is very clear. So my personal experience is I do get a lot of hate, but not the kind that would really worry me because it's not very concrete. You know, it's not people planning to assassinate me or something like that. It's more the run-of-the-mill kind. And the crazy thing is it increases reach and visibility. I mean, that's the basic contradiction. It's like when you said, I get meaner and meaner on Twitter, and that's not the person I want to be. This is what the business model is pushing. You know, if I put out a tweet or a piece of content on any platform just saying, oh, we did this great thing in the European Parliament, or there's this fantastic initiative that does fantastic things, no visibility, you know, no reach. If I attack a fellow politician or a far-right party, I do get all the hate comments, but I also get a lot of visibility and a lot of likes because I also reach my own community. You know, and that's the basic paradoxon that you have to become a person who attacks in order to be seen at all as a politician. And that's the basic problem. It's the business model of big tech. They want to polarize people because polarized content keeps people online, and that's the basic business model. So people, they can show us ads and they make money. But that means going for hate, going for fear, and that intrinsically means reducing diversity. Because the easiest way, I mean, who already has the power, white people, people who live in the country and speak the language of the country they live in, who are straight, basically. And the hate works very well against all other groups. And this, in the end, reduces diversity because women get driven out. The LGBT community gets driven out of that because we do this basically professionally, but a lot of people I talk to say, well, we just gave it up. You know, we just give social media up. They're not there anymore, or they self-censor. And there's a lot of studies showing that online hate leads to self-censorship among people, not only online, but also in the offline world. There's a German study that really shows it also has an impact on the offline world. So that's a basic business model. So what should we do in order to give the possibility to other communities to thrive? I think we do need the regulation of the big tech companies and basically saying AI and social networks, it's the same companies, it's the same people. So get rid of profiling, and we did that big battle in the past mandate, and we sort of won half of it, you know, glass is half full, half empty, but still way to go. We need to get rid of addictive patterns, because if you want to propose alternative platforms that are less addictive and healthier and really give all people the possibility to be there without fearing for their lives or being attacked all the time, people who want to have meaningful conversations, you have to get rid of the addictive patterns, because it's very hard to compete for the larger public against a very addictive platform like TikTok, for example. If you want to do a healthier model, people won't go there because it's, you know, it's our psychology, and unfortunately we're all victims of our own psychology. So it's like first giving people heroin and then saying, oh, you know, a glass of red wine is really nice, but once, you know, they're on heroin, there's no way you get them back to fruit juices. So I think we still need the regulation, and then we need more pluralism in terms of algorithmic moderation. For a very long time, the digital rights community said, well, we just need a chronological order. I have never really believed that that works. We have that in the DSA as one of the alternatives, or something like that, because the information is just so much that in the end people do want it moderated somehow, and they want some kind of algorithmic order to it. I think it's too late to just go for chronological, because things would just, you know, be not meaningful and too quick. But we have to give people the possibility to make their own choices. And we try to really push for that in the Digital Markets Act with the interoperability clause, so you can take your content from one platform to the other, and you would have the possibility to opt for a different kind of provider of algorithms, for example. And we got very, very far, actually, and then it failed in trilogue because member states didn't want it. One particular member state didn't want it. But I think this is still a way to go and to build up a narrative that this is about freedom of choice, because the other side is now saying any kind of tech regulation is censorship, and that's exactly what it is not. What we are living through now with all this online hate and all the disinformation, for me, that's a kind of censorship. Because if I speak out on a topic, I have to expect all that online hate, and many people don't want to take that because it's huge. So really talking about pluralism and diversity online and freedom of choice and freedom of choice of users, I think that is super important. How do we get there? Interoperability, certainly. Good regulation against addictive patterns, against profiling. And that's what we keep working on it. I think we have a medium legal basis with the DSA, DMA. It's not good enough, but to start really meaningfully enforcing it will help. What we need at the same time are initiatives, grassroots initiatives, open spaces, and we need to support them. That is becoming more and more difficult. I feel, you know, it's been for a long time, we've been speaking about shrinking spaces for civil society, and this is, I think, what we really see in digital. While for some time, digital networks were really a possibility of opening up spaces that have been really important for the feminist community, for the trans community. A lot of networking, a lot of connection was possible. I think now it's really turning the other way around, that all that disinformation and hate bringing up the far right, who really wants to shrink these spaces intentionally. So as long as we can with democratic governments, we need to support those spaces. And there's some interesting initiatives in Germany. For example, we have the Sovereign Tech Fund, which is more for supporting open source software, but also digital public infrastructure. So this whole idea that comes from Wikimedia of digital public goods, I think that is super important because it really serves the community, but it also makes us independent in economic terms from big tech. So I think it's one of the important pieces of a big puzzle. But this is something that I very, very strongly support, and I'm happy to see that coming into, you know, the European discourse. I think that's a really important piece. We also need a lot of funding, not necessarily for tech communities, but more for communities or initiatives that support democracy in a more general sense. We feel democracy is very strongly attacked, and this attack on democracy is very linked to the business model of the big tech companies. So as long as we can, I think we really strongly need to support the work of these communities and initiatives. And it's become difficult. I mean, even I'm from Germany, and parts of my country, it's really, you have to fear for your physical integrity if you're an activist for democracy. So we really need strong supports by government, by EU funding, and a little bit to connect these two things, like to have open standards and open source software for people who advocate for open societies, for democracy, democratic societies have some kind of connections and really have more money in that. There is an interesting question, is what happens when this kind of money falls then into far-right governance forms, and that is an issue. You know, in Italy, you have a lot of public funding for the press, for example, and now you have a lot of newspapers that are very openly against attack women, are very anti-feminist, and they get public funding. So I think that's an interesting question. I don't have a solution, but it's something we need to really reflect a little bit on together. If we advocate public funding for democratic initiatives and grassroots initiatives, what happens when it falls into the hands of the far right and they just fund their own initiatives and not a broad range of initiatives? So that's a little bit my concern. So I think we need a mixture, support and funding for initiatives, protection of the individuals concerned a lot more, and not only, you know, in already open autocratic countries, also in my countries, a lot more forms of support for victims of hate speech, of online hate, a broad landscape of forms of support, and also a culture, I think, of support of people who are being attacked, really making it not acceptable at all. So that is super important, but also hard regulation to get rid of addictive patterns of profiling and of one algorithms or algorithmic system decided by the big tech CEO. We don't want that anymore. We want freedom of choice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Together with Alexandra from Poland came Joanna from with Amnesty Poland. I wanted to give the word earlier. Sorry about that. Would you like to come in now? Would that be a good moment?
Yes. I would like to comment. Yes, I'm Joanna. Oh.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm Jana Raskowska from Amnesty Poland, as Jan said, and I came with Alexandra. And I would like to add a few words about what Alexandra said from human rights perspective. So Amnesty International has found that amplification of harmful content, the one that was mentioned, can be linked to the surveillance-based business model of big tech. This model, based on the pervasive extraction of data about people, is using content shaping algorithms that are tuned to maximize engagement and boost content that is often harmful, and this is what tends to get the most attention from users. And the surveillance-based business model is inherently incompatible with the right to privacy and poses a systemic threat to a range of other rights. In a report titled Toxic Twitter from 2017, Amnesty International has found that there has been issues of hateful and abusive content on Twitter. The content has been particularly targeting women who at the time said that they don't feel safe enough to express themselves on the platform without fear of violence or abuse. And what we've just heard from Alexandra, and also what LGBTI activists from Poland has recently said, it seems that the problem has become more pronounced in recent years. As you can hear, as it was said already in here, there is a high amount of anti-LGBTI content on X, and it seems to be more common on this platform than on any other, as also was already pointed out. Amnesty International has also documented cases of such algorithmic harms where Meta's amplification of hatred and discrimination against Rohingya in Myanmar in 2017, and content targeting the Tigrayan community during the armed conflict in Ethiopia in 2020 fueled devastating human rights impacts. European Union has taken important steps to address the harms of big tech, obviously, but human rights compliant implementation is crucial and many gaps remain. To truly address the harms of big tech, the European Union needs regulation which tackles the business model. Amnesty International's key recommendations are banning all surveillance advertising, effectively prohibiting the invasive collection of protected personal data in line with data protection principles, and tackling harmful algorithmic amplification by introducing and effectively enforcing mandatory safeguards for algorithmic systems.
Thank you so much. That's super helpful, and I'm glad to use that as an opening statement, I guess, for the round so that everybody can participate. Thank you so much, Ella, for taking care of the microphone. So please throw in your questions, your remarks. There's a lot of knowledge and experience in this room, and I'd like to hear it and to harness that for this conversation, either as a direct comment to what has been said or as additional experience. To me, a lot of what has been said so far sounds very much like I mean, we talk about the business model is the problem, amplification is the problem, algorithms are the problem. That, you know, in a way, the stuff I use, which is Mastodon, it's already there. There is already kind of the open source, algorithm-free space that you can use. But I am very aware that as a white dude, I only see a tiny fraction of what exists in any network that I use. And so I'd love to kind of hear from all of you in the meantime. So please, the floor is yours.
Yes, hi, thank you. And thank you all for the interesting talks. My name is Jantien Borsboom, and I'm the Director of Public Spaces. We are a coalition based in the Netherlands of civic and public organizations. And we think that it's not right that for us as organizations that uphold public values, that we have to make use of big tech platforms and tools. So what we're trying to do is we try to look at all the tools and the platforms that we use towards our audience and see if the public values are upheld in there, and if not, if we can change them for different tools or platforms. So I would like to propose a solution to the problem. Because I think we see a big role for civic and public organizations in the social media challenge that we have. Because you were just speaking about the Fediverse and Mastodon. These are open source, it is open source software. And you are able to host it yourself as an organization. So what we're trying to create is a movement of organizations that will host their own social media networks that can then communicate with other social media networks because of interoperability. And in this way, we're also really looking very hopefully at the DMA, because we hope there will be more legislation on interoperability there. Yeah, and so it's not really a question I have, but more I'm trying to find other parties in Europe that would want to collaborate with us to try and create this movement of public civic organization hosting their own social media platforms. So we can have, we can set our own moderation rules. We can do this together with the communities. Like imagine a library, for example. The library could be an organization to host a social media network. And together with the communities in the library, they could set the moderation rules. They could create algorithms, if they'd like to, you know, to filter the content, but from their own values. So I hope that you will join me in this mission.
Maybe very quickly, as an explainer, I realized maybe I should have thrown that in. For those who don't know, Mastodon is a Twitter clone that is free and open source software and can be run by anybody.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Alice Stolmeyer. I was to perhaps complement the story about Twitter. So I was an early adopter of Twitter. I think I started in 2010 or so. And then respectful conversations were actually more the rule than an exception. It's actually in 2014, because I was tweeting about the illegal annexation of Crimea and similar geopolitical topics, Gazprom, you name it, that I was attacked by Russian troll factory, probably, the early days. And in fact, instead of silencing me, it ended with me founding my own organization called Defend Democracy. And our mission, and this is perhaps, you know, relevant for today's topic, tech and society. So our mission is to defend and strengthen democracy against foreign, domestic, and technological threats. And I really want to emphasize, not just for you, but what we always say on panels and to the Commission and whoever wants to listen, is that these three threats, so the foreign, domestic, and technological, they are not separate from each other, but they are interlinked and they are reinforcing each other. And so yeah, it's useful to look at it from that more broader, comprehensive perspective, and hopefully that will help also advance certain discussions. And we also often make the point that it's not just democracy that is at stake, but also our security, because that's increasingly interlinked also. Just to agree very much with Alexandra and also the Wikimedia lady, I think indeed that, because regulation is so slow, and the big tech, they are behaving like big tobacco and the big fossil fuel industry. So they do anything to delay and water down regulation because it's their business model. So I think indeed that creating a European digital alternative infrastructure would be a very helpful way. It's not instead of regulation, but it's an additional parallel track, I would say.
And while we know that it is a business model, but I don't know if there you see the broader, you see they're trying to frame their business model as a way to fight for the free speech or something like that. I guess so. I've seen it, and I thought that probably this is why they are talking about the free speech so much. And yeah, the Russian trolls, we have a lot of them, and they are always making remarks on, the most divisive things possible. In Poland, it's easier to spot them because many times they have I forgot the word, but there's something which you put the fire. When you have a fire, you use it to put it down. What is extinguisher? Yeah, fire extinguisher. They have a fire extinguisher in their avatar because it is the reference to unfamous Grzegorz Braun putting down Hanukkah candles with fire extinguisher because he's a crazy anti-Semite. So it's easy to spot them, but they are. We have them also. They are not adding. They are adding to the very unhealthy, standards of discussion on Twitter.
Thank you. Anybody else? Otherwise, I throw in the question. Yeah.
Thank you. Katarzyna Szymilewicz-Panowska, Foundation, member of EDRi. As much as I love the alternatives and this idea that one day we will not be sitting in any gated garden, I'm thinking about the plan for interim measures between now and that happy future. And one of these measures we've been discussing a lot in our bubble is forcing interoperability of the big tech platforms so that we can, without trusting them, which I strongly agree with you, Alice, and others being skeptical about big tech fixing their own business model and making them earn less money on polarizing us and hate speech and all that. Interoperability could be a way to impose certain solutions even without them showing that goodwill. Specifically, the measure I'm dreaming about, and I'm wondering whether you think it's realistic at all, is this competition of algorithms on social media. So a situation in which users who got addicted to Twitter or something like that and are not likely to move can still select a different algorithm to recommend different content and therefore improve their own well-being or prevent dissemination of hateful content or disinformation because of not supporting engagement-oriented algorithms with their choices. Is this scenario, knowing EU politics and what the Commission is exploring under DMA enforcement, do you think, Alexandra, Jan, I think you have opinions on that, it's realistic to imagine as like next 5 to 10 years, or we better invest in alternatives?
I think we need to be quicker than 5 or 10 years. I have a very pessimistic outlook. for the future of democracy if we let this business model go. But well, it's an interesting question because we really fought for it hard in the DMA, and we are so close to getting it. And then it was killed in Trilog, and it was really a downer. I think if we want to have it, we have to get this discussion out of these expert circles, and we have to stop calling it interoperability.
Or unbundling.
Or unbundling, yes, exactly, because that's it's a term that works for an expert community, but in the end, an expert community will be dominated by a lot of people working for big tech because they have ways to meet and to get to the commission. So if we want to have a chance to get this done, I think we need to get this narrative out that sort of goes for some kind of, algorithmic freedom is a little bit bizarre because you need to explain, but like freedom of choice. And have some kind of public opinion pushing for it. I think there's a huge awareness of what goes wrong with social networks and what is not working, especially the risk for minors and the polarization in society. That is something people are aware of, but people very rarely understand what the business model behind is and how you could do it differently. And those are the two discussions. In the last term, big tech said, well, if you want to do that differently, the advertising model, people will have to pay because they know people don't like the idea of paying for a service that now is free. And the new thing is now it's censorship. Whatever you do is censorship. So I think in order to have a chance to do this, you need to create some public narrative, something that people easily understand, to say we want more choice. And I really loved what you showed at my conference, this thing with the sliders. That was super easy. It's the kind of image, maybe you want to explain what it was because it's your thing. And have this kind of narrative. We want freedom of choice. We don't want Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg to dictate what we see on social media. We, as the people, we want to be able to choose our content, and not chronologically, but in a very easy way with like 3 sliders, and it's done, and I have a different algorithm. I think to really have a movement and people asking for that, because that's something you go to trade unions and go to churches and to go out of the digital bubble. And so this is what I'm asking for. This is nothing to do with censorship. This is, giving the choice, like people choose what kind of newspaper they want to buy. They choose what kind of feed they want to have on their social media. I think if we do that, we have a chance. If we just leave it to the very technical people or political people in the commission, it's hard. I think there are great people in the enforcement departments. A very, very great respect for DSA and DMA enforcement. Don't get me wrong, but they do depend from the political level, and the political majorities have moved to the right. That is very clear. And I'm clear, in my experience, big tech has ways to reach out to the conservatives and especially to the far right, and they will have a say in all this. So you need to create a public opinion movement before, and therefore you need to have a narrative that people can easily understand. One slogan, one image, and we know what is behind there, but this is what you need to communicate, and then you go back to the commission and you push for it. That would be my way forward. Want to explain about the slider thing? I don't know how much time we have. But
I can even show it. Prototyping user empowerment. If you put that phrase in your not Google search, you will get it. There is a paper published by Panoptical, People versus Big Tech last year, where we still hoped very much that the European Commission will be coming up with mitigation measures, being more forceful in imposing solutions on big tech than we think they are going to do now. So we played that little provocation. We convened a group of designers to just do mock-up solutions. Of course, we couldn't design it really, but just for people to visualize that these things, we're not talking rocket science, we're not talking reprogramming platforms altogether. So even simple slider where you tweak your algorithm, you start training your own algorithm according to values that you choose, like, more quality, less noise, or more entertainment today. But tomorrow I wake up and I actually want more news because I'm at work. So being able to play with the sliders, even something as simple as that, could give more user empowerment. So prototyping user empowerment is the paper.
just to add on that very quickly, and then I shut up, because there you can team up with like journalists, because there are a couple of journalist initiatives who work on these things like indicators for trustworthy journalism, so you can integrate that into the slider, and that means you can convince the press people that this is interesting, and you can convince, in Germany, media are always calling for media pluralism, which is vanishing with big tech because they have their own partnerships and their own business models on what kind of media to show on the internet and whatnot. So I think this is where you can look for partners that have an influence on public opinion. And then, if you get this thing rolling, you need the buzzword and you need to get it rolling, and then it will end up in the commission on national governments, and you get national journalists and publishers on it, and there we go. Then 2 years, let's do this.
Okay, so 5 to 10 years. Any comments on that? Is that the way to go? Like, can we force big tech to do that for us?
Herine. I have so many thoughts and ideas, and I don't know where to start from, but maybe to start from the lock-in effect, and which means that you are forced to stay. For example, a lot of us know about the existence of Signal, which is open source, which is safer than WhatsApp, but then you go to a work environment or you study at university and you have a WhatsApp group, and you can't go out from the WhatsApp group because you can't know what is happening in there. So this is also made by design, and this is also their business model to keep us locked in their environment. And how to solve it, I have no idea, even though I would like to see the public digital online public spaces governed by civil society, but then a lot of other questions raised. Do we have some, we kind of even failed to make non-digital public spaces not safe. Do we know how to really make digital public spaces safe, and who needs to do that, and how can we collaborate in doing so? I have no idea, so maybe you know, and maybe. And the other thing that we are also very late. The digital sphere is rising by every second, and for us to make a policy, it takes like 5 years. For 5 years, and while every second there are so many new things happening, especially with the rise of AI technologies. So we need to also maybe change the way how we take decisions. But these are all like questions that I have, and I have zero answers.
Hi, this is Lena from the Council on Tech and Social Cohesion and Search for Common Ground. So I'll just add two also bigger questions. One is, as we look at this digital commons, how much is the interest in investing in deliberative technology that's easily available as a way of giving people non-polarizing participatory experiences? How much is that a priority? Where does that fit in this conversation? And then secondly, just coming back to the algorithms, there was a proposition made around really trying within the risk assessments to demand a certain kind of transparency around algorithmic amplification of misinformation and monetization of disinformation. What's the ripeness or appetite for moving in that direction? And if you could offer any insights, thanks.
Start to answer a few of these. I guess I'm going to just pick up on a few of the comments and questions, if that's okay. What you said about deliberative technology, I think is very important. Communities are still, online communities are still experimenting with governance systems and how to do it well, and how to do deliberation well, and how to prevent deliberation from becoming toxic or just being dominated by loud voices or tyrannies of the majority. So this is something I'm extremely interested in myself, and I know a lot of our colleagues in the Wikimedia kind of community are interested in. One could do a whole conference perhaps on that topic alone, or a PhD thesis. Another thing about risk assessments and algorithms, that actually one of my colleagues here, Ricky Gaines, has been leading a human rights impact assessment on how the Wikimedia Foundation uses machine learning and algorithmic tools within the Wikimedia projects to support editors, which is very different from the way in which algorithms are used for amplification and so on, but nonetheless one needs to do impact assessment and risk assessment, and I'm sure he could talk at some point, perhaps in the hallways or something, to people who are interested in that. But I guess the point being is, no matter whether you're nonprofit, for-profit, community-driven and whatnot, you need to be grounded in human rights commitments and standards, and there's never a zero risk. There's never a zero risk project or platform, whether you're a public interest project or Meta or whatever. And so you need to acknowledge your human rights responsibilities, think about your impacts, take them seriously, and take responsibility for them. And that's critical. And that's something that we are committed with our communities to work on. One other thing before I pass it along relates to the question that came up about how to make people safer online. And I guess I'd just throw out a perspective on that. There's a reason why it's not possible to make children 100% safe in Brussels. You perhaps could make Brussels 100% safe for children to wander around unsupervised in Brussels. Brussels would become Pyongyang under that situation, right? I mean, you can create 100% safety, but it might be only safe for certain types of people. You might have more policing than you'd ever want to have. You might have to have more surveillance than you'd ever want to have. So I think societies in the real world are having to find balance, and what does safety even mean for whom, under what circumstances? Different communities within any particular space disagree, depending on, again, your gender, your background, how much money you have, etc., how much power you have or don't have. And that's the same online. But personally, I don't think it's possible for any human space, anywhere, to be 100% safe for everyone all the time. Because power exists, because inequalities exist. What we need to strive for are commitments to human rights, commitments to security and safety, and we work towards them. And we are always going to disagree about the measures you need to take. And that's the whole point of democracy, is that we disagree and we experiment. And it's like, okay, we're trying to make Brussels safer for children, so we do this, that, and the other. Oh, we overdid it there. This other community got harmed by these measures, so now we have to adjust. And then this other community gets mad because their children, something happened, and then we go a third way, and we're experimenting and debating, and we're always getting angry at each other. But we have to have our deliberative systems to have constructive conversations about solving problems that are never going to be utopian. We're never going to reach some utopian state because we're human beings and we're too diverse to ever reach such a state. But that's the point, is ensuring that our systems are open and rights respecting, that we can continually work to improve and deliberate and debate. I don't think you can have a human, democratic, open society, rights-based, that has no problems. So that's my personal opinion, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think what we might not agree on is the degree of safety for different population groups. I think we're all aware that we can't have 100% safety, but that the internet is so disproportionately unsafe for women, for people of color, for the LGBTQ community. That is something we need to tackle, and that has to do with the business model. Obviously, also with the bias we have in society and the basic racism, but also with the business model that really prospers on exactly that. And I think that we agree that we need to tackle that. To come back to the question. I do hear there is an appetite for looking into recommender systems and algorithmic systems, so maybe watch out a little bit for the news and press releases of the European Commission. I really think the DSA enforcement department is very committed to this, and they have some really good people, and I think they're going to do it. What I'm concerned about is how long will we be able to keep up the political will to really do that? Because then you start really touching the business model on the money. And then there will be a backlash, there will be big tech attacking already the whole censorship issue. I'm hearing it in plenary of the European Parliament, I'm hearing it everywhere. I get attacked on Twitter every time I talk about DSA regulation or something connected. It's like, oh, you want to censor us all. So I think, how do we handle that backlash? That's the more interesting question. And how do we put forward this positive narrative that what I said before, freedom of choice or whatever, how you want to frame it, but saying, well, regulating this is about freedom and not about censorship, because we really need to support, I think, the Commission there with public opinion and political support to keep on doing that. Because my fear is that we'll start doing it, and once they get to interesting results, and we'll tell big tech companies, well, you need to change this and this, when these changes become meaningful and impact the advertising revenue, then they will really, really fight back hard, and then it's going to be difficult. On the deliberative tech, I think that's super interesting. I'm a little bit surprised it's not being used more. And I think it's important to bring it up. I think politicians often are not aware of these instruments existing. You know, they read on Facebook and Twitter and think that's public opinion. Yes, that's the way it is. I mean, there's really a problem. I hear so much about media literacy. And I get allergy every time I hear media literacy, because it's often used in a way that, you know, people have to learn to discern the facts from fake news, which is not possible, and it's psychologically it's all bullshit. But what media literacy, I think, should mean that people are aware of the way public opinion is distorted on the big platforms. I try not to say the internet, because that's not the internet, but in the end it ended up sort of being it. And knowing about the fact that there are alternatives. What is important, I think, with these platforms is that you embed them in a larger discourse of public participation, and you make sure it can't be sort of kidnapped by certain interest groups that are particularly active. I mean, that used to be a problem with Wikipedia, that, you know, men have a lot more time on their hands to write, so it was very male-dominated. I knew Wikimedia did a lot of things to tackle, to address that issue. But we have that, you know, in public participation processes, you have sort of the same problem, that usually women have more to do and not so used to speaking up in public places. Poorer people will not be used to listen to, so they won't participate in those. So if you just invite citizens at, you know, 7 o'clock in the evening to discuss whether to turn a street into a pedestrian street or not, all, you know, the older men who don't have, you know, their kids to put to bed, but they do want to park their car, they would show up. And the women who are really there with the stroller, and so they're at home taking care of their kids. You know, I simplify this a little bit, but this is in public participation. This is a real issue, that you don't have a really broad representativity of the people concerned, but those who have particular interests and more time on their hands and are more powerful in society, who are not afraid to speak up in a public space, they will show up. And I'm a little bit afraid that this is a problem you can also have with the deliberative platform. So I'm totally in favor but you have to embed that in a broader discourse of participation and in a participation culture. And I think especially in municipalities, it would be super interesting in the best hands. And I mean, Barcelona was the great example. So I think we need to roll that out. What I think is super interesting, I spoke a few months ago to Audrey Tang, who really fought disinformation in Taiwan, is saying, well, you have to give people a different way of participating. And if people feel they are, I don't know, how do you say selbstwirksam in English? You know that? They have an impact, you know, whatever they do, they have a voice. Yeah. They can participate in some way and their voice is heard. It's really an antidote against propaganda and disinformation campaigns. And, you know, in Eastern Germany, where we have a lot of, you know, far right that is very strong, every polls, people say, well, nobody listens to me. You know, I'm trying to send you a message because otherwise I'm not listened to. Whether that is real or not is I think, is on a different page. But, you know, giving people at least the feeling they are being listened to and there's a place where I can put their opinion, which is not necessarily a Meta platform or TikTok, I think that's super important. But it's also important then to follow up on it. Because often when you have public participation, be it online or offline, people come up with these really great ideas, and then there's no money and nothing happens. And that is super frustrating. So I think if you use the instruments politically, you have to be able to ensure there's a follow-up and things really happen. Because otherwise people just get frustrated because they put their time in it and nothing happens. So, but it's a great instrument, absolutely.
Thank you so much. We've got 5 minutes left. I would love to hand it back to you, Alexandra, if I may. If you listen to the conversation, you gave the opening words in a way. Does that make you hopeful?
Well, if the similarities between the big tech and big oil and are so pronounced, then I don't know really. I mean, we see how we're managing the climate crisis. But, well, I have some hopes with those new regulations that are to appear. And I think that maybe, well, after this panel, maybe I am a bit more than I was before, because I was just taking the internet how it is for granted. That, okay, yes, this is how you interact with people. You don't even know if these are people or bots or trolls or whatever. So for some time I just thought that, yeah, this is how it is. But now, after I was also preparing for this panel to know something about the regulations that are to come, or how is it possible to take care of the problem, I think that there are ways for that, and I am more hopeful than I was before. I was actually working on a book. I've written a book. I was a co-author of the book about Polish incel community, and I had to dig deep into very bad places on Facebook, also on Facebook groups, on Twitter, and also on Polish forums, like Chan forums. This is crazy what's going on there, really. Yeah, I think it also had an impact on my mental health. I think that reading all those things, though. So now when I hear that there are some ways maybe to manage that, I think that it's, well, we'll see, but it's good that it doesn't have to be like that, because as I said, I was just thinking that this is how internet is. And I was quite shocked when I've heard that in 2010. It wasn't like that. I wasn't so into internet conversations that time. And now I hear that it wasn't like that, so good. So these are the my final statement, because, well, I see that people are more and more polarized. I see how I lost the ability to even talk to people who I disagree with, and I think it is because of these internet bubbles where I just have the informations that suit me. I try to reach out, but sometimes it's not possible. So I see that I think I've lost the ability to actually discuss things without getting very angry. So that is bad. I think that is bad. So yeah, that's from me.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody for the participation. I would have loved to continue the conversation for much, much longer. I would have loved to discuss how decentralized social media can be a solution or not. It looks like there are these two strands. One, how do we regulate the big tech companies properly to make their spaces safer? And then B, how can we build alternative spaces that don't carry all that baggage with them and that don't have these negative incentives that lead us to the bad places in the first place. I'd love to continue that conversation. Before we close, I'd like to make two just hints. One is, you mentioned the Digital Knowledge Act in the very beginning. There is a booth from Wikimedia. I think they have it there, right, as a paper. So you can go there and look it up. It's in the main hall. Awesome, cool. So you can talk to them directly. There's also a booth about Mastodon and the Fediverse with some more information. You can try it out. I am slightly biased though, because I run a Mastodon server myself. It's called eupolicy.social. And so if you want to check out how Mastodon works, how that's maybe or maybe not the better Twitter, just go to eupolicy.social and sign up, and you can get an account for free. It's run by volunteers. There's no ads. There is no algorithm. There is no all this shit that we've been discussing. Feel free to check it out and check out the booth if you're interested. All right, and that's for us. Thank you.